back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow, and joining us now is Cathy Kunkel. Cathy Kunkel is the Democratic candidate for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District of West Virginia. The last time we talked to Cathy, she was just beginning her primary campaign. So first of all, Cathy Kunkel, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back.
Well, great to have you. And how have things gone since we last spoke, those many months ago?
Well, there's a global pandemic happening now. It's one thing.
So I hear.
Yeah. So it's been a very different campaign than we perhaps initially envisioned. But, just purely from the campaign standpoint, we ended up not having any opposition in the primary, which has been great. And so we're on to the general election here against Congressman Alex Mooney.
So for those who might not know, the 2nd Congressional District, where is that exactly? Could you describe it a little bit for our folks?
Sure. Yeah. So we have 3 congressional districts in West Virginia that obviously cut the state into thirds. And so we're kind of the middle third. I live in Charleston, and the district goes all the way out to the eastern panhandle part of West Virginia, which is like the Shepherdstown and Harpers Ferry area for people who may be familiar.
Okay, so that's a lovely country and, interesting groups of people and mixes of people there. And how would you say, let's start with this. Most people picture West Virginia as a state that's solidly red state, went heavily for Trump, and so on, still has a Democratic senator, but largely thought to have in the last 50 years gone from being Democratic to very hardcore Republican. Do you agree with that assessment?
I really don't. I think the reality is a lot more complicated than that, and that really we're a state of with a lot of people who are frustrated with the establishment of both political parties. And you can see that in our voter registration numbers. 25 years ago, about 2/3 of the registered voters in the state were registered Democrat. And now it's down to about 1/3. But almost all of that loss in the Democratic Party has gone into people who are registered as no party, not as people who are registered Republican. And, we can also see the kind of anti-establishment trend in our state, not just in terms of the vote for Trump, but the strong support for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary and in the school employee strikes in 2018. We had thousands of teachers and school service personnel in our capital in 2018 chanting about raising taxes on the natural gas industry to fund public education and to fund public employee health insurance. So it's that kind of economic populism that I think traces long roots back in West Virginia.
So let's then move on to your race. So you didn't have any competition in the primary. Nobody ran against you this time. Was that because people consider you, or other Democrats considered your opponent unbeatable? Was it because they thought you were such a powerhouse they dare not go against you? Or why is it that you were unopposed in that race, do you think?
I mean, I think it's probably a mix of factors. We did have some strong fundraising results that probably helped. But I don't think it's that our opponent is unbeatable. He's actually the weakest of the 3 congressional representatives that we have here in terms of, the share of the vote that he got in 2018. He won with just 54% of the vote. And now, looking forward and looking at how our president has been handling this pandemic, I think enthusiasm for Trump is down in West Virginia. And so I think we do have a real opportunity here this fall.
So, I want people to understand that. And again, we're talking to Cathy Kunkel. That's Kunkel. Cathy Kunkel is running for Congress in West Virginia. Cathy, you were part of and are part of the West Virginia Can't Wait movement, which was basically a slate of candidates. We've had Stephen Smith and others on who were part of West Virginia Can't Wait. And as I understand it, it's basically a slate of people who have I would say in a positive way, I would describe it as a kind of populist or people's agenda for West Virginians. And in much of that, it appears on your own website, kunkelforcongress.com. But, a new deal for West Virginia, healthcare, jobs, things that people need, the environment. And I know you're an energy policy expert yourself. Is it safe to say that that the West Virginia, not obviously not all the candidates made it and won their primary races, but do you consider that the backbone of a new political movement that might be forming, or what are your thoughts on that altogether?
I think it's very exciting. I mean, it's the reason I ran this year was because of the infrastructure and the momentum that was being created by West Virginia Can't Wait. And we still have more than 40 candidates running for office up and down the ballot as part of West Virginia Can't Wait. And the centerpiece of that, in my view, is our pledge to not take corporate money in our campaigns, which I think, again, sets us apart from the establishment of both major parties. I mean, I'm very excited. I think it's provided a real opportunity to collaborate with other candidates, including some teachers who got energized by the strike and are running for office for the first time. It's provided a real, I think, organizing opportunity in many parts of the state, especially more rural parts of the state, where people have gotten really excited about this, more populist agenda. And so I do think that the infrastructure that we've been building as West Virginia Can't Wait throughout this campaign will last beyond the election.
When you, and again, we're talking with Cathy Kunkel, a Democratic congressional candidate in the 2nd District, West Virginia. When you travel around your district, speaking with voters, I mean, I recognize there's a mix of different kinds of groups and different kinds of folks in your district. But what kind of reception have you been getting from people who might not be politically active themselves or might be newly politically active or whatever? But if you walk up to somebody in a, shopping center or whatever and say, "Hi, I'm Cathy Kunkel, I'm running for Congress," and you start to talk to them about your agenda, what kind of response do you get?
Yeah, it's been a pretty positive response. And I think, the fact of not taking corporate money is something that is, a quick thing to say that sets me and other West Virginia Can't Wait candidates apart, and often kind of piques people's attention as, oh, this is something a little bit different. So I found that to be very helpful. And then, of course, right now there's just so much urgent economic need in West Virginia as a result of the coronavirus and the related economic kind of collapse related to that, and just in terms of food insecurity and healthcare, and increasing concerns about housing and rent as well. So there's just a lot of very serious day-to-day issues that people are grappling with, and unfortunately, the current incumbent has done very little, I would argue, to address those needs. And in fact, voted against the first coronavirus relief bill that provided for free coronavirus testing and expanded paid sick days.
Well, I hope that's something you mention. I'm sure it is. Now, one of the things in certain parts of the country we're able to, where I'd say certain kind of politician in certain parts of the country was able to get away with for a while, was saying, well, we don't have that many cases, so they're just trying to scare you because they hate you, and so they're fake news, this is not a real thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, to be honest, the current status of COVID-19 transmission in West Virginia. Probably should have looked it up before we talked, but between what are voters feeling right now? What's the sort of skepticism to fear ratio on the disease, you think?
It's obviously an evolving situation. And I think in more rural parts of the state, in some counties that really haven't been touched much by the virus, I think there is more kind of still skepticism of whether this is really an important issue or whether it's been overblown. But West Virginia has seen, I think, almost a 50% increase in cases over the last month. If you look at transmission rates, the R0 rate, we're among the highest states in the country at the moment. So unfortunately, it is becoming an increasingly severe problem here. And I've actually been hearing a lot in the last couple of weeks from teachers, especially, who are very concerned about if and how we are going to reopen schools safely on September 8th, which is the current plan amidst this rise in cases and community spread.
And what about the economic conditions in your district? Are they, I mean, some people are having a tough time already, I know, but how's it looking there?
Right. I mean, I think it's pretty rough. I mean, I've been doing some volunteering with food pantries and food distribution, and it's certainly elevated need for that. I think the estimate was well over 60,000 folks in West Virginia have lost employer-based health care as a result of losing jobs during the pandemic, which just kind of points to the insanity of our healthcare system and the need for Medicare for all. And then many small businesses here in West Virginia had to wait weeks or even months for any kind of relief to arrive. And even though the Paycheck Protection Program was, I think, an 8-week program, and obviously our economy is not rebounding, because it turns out that you can reopen your economy, but still, if people are afraid to resume economic activity, you don't get back to normal.
Right. And again, we're talking with Cathy Kunkel, Democratic candidate for Congress in West Virginia. What about Social Security? We're starting to hear again about attacks on Social Security, maybe start to undermine it financially with a payroll tax cut. This talk from a lot of Republicans, perhaps including your opponent, saying, well, we can't really afford that anymore because we've had to give up so much money to big corporations. And is that an issue you're hearing about or running on, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, certainly an issue that I am running on. I mean, both of my parents actually spent their whole careers working for the Social Security Administration, so I am passionate about that program. I think that we absolutely need to make it a stronger program. Strengthen benefits, get rid of the maximum on taxable income, so that we can finance the program in a stronger way, and have benefits that are tied to the actual cost of living increases for seniors, since cost of living for seniors, because of prescription drug prices and other things, tends to go up faster than for the majority of the population. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's been a Republican goal for a long time to undermine Social Security, perhaps even to privatize it, which I strongly opposed to. And I think it's highly ironic, as you said, that we always question whether we can afford this, and yet we can't cut the Pentagon budget by 10%, which is a debate earlier this week.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear you support it so much. I've been debating whether to ask you this question, Cathy, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And which is, if what are your thoughts about your chances to pull this up? I mean, part of the reason why I hesitate is because, having been tracking political races for years, I've come to the conclusion that the way to find out who the winner, potential winner is by counting the votes afterwards. That's how you know who the winner. But everything else is just, groundless. But having said that, how do you rate your own chances?
I mean, I think we have a good opportunity, and I will preface that by saying that if anyone tells you that they know how to campaign or how to predict elections during a pandemic, I would highly question that. Yeah. But that said, some of the big picture trends here, in terms of declining enthusiasm for Trump, and the fact that my opponent really has just run for the last couple of cycles on Trump's coattails, do give me optimism here. We also have there's been an ongoing environmental justice fight in the eastern part of the district that helped flip some local seats in 2018. And I've gotten a lot of support from those organizations. So I think that is bolstering our campaign as well. So.
Great. And last question for you, Cathy Kunkel. It's a two-parter. Where can people go to find out more about your campaign and potentially maybe contribute a few bucks if they're so inclined?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. People can go to kunkelforcongress.com. My name is spelled Kunkel. And you can also keep up with our campaign activities on Facebook at Kunkel for Congress.
All right. Well, Cathy Kunkel, I wish you the very best of luck. And thank you for running. And thank you for coming on the program.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Our pleasure, too. And we'll be right back after this. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and you're listening to The Zero Hour.